Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Drums webinar with Datametrics on 6 steps to successful Black Friday strategy in 2019. My name is Sarah Barber, and I'll be your host for today, and I'm joined by CTO John Earnshaw from Datametrics and the lovely Alina Ghost from an SEO manager at luxury goods brand Amara. We'll get an opportunity to see who are the top performers on the day for this year, explore the strategy behind these campaigns, and then learn the 6 steps to success for 2019. Here at the Drum, we love to run an interactive webinar, so please feel free to pop any questions in the chat box, and we'll try our best to get back to you on those at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, I'll hand over to our lovely speakers today.
Cool. Okay, shall we give you a little bit of background on what we do first?
Absolutely, yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Well, at Pi, we work with major global corporations, and what we do is we help them to realize the insight they can gain from access to billions of bits of data, particularly consumer searches. And we've got an amazing software and reporting intelligence that enables them to identify customer trends, access competitor performance because it's completely URL agnostic, and also spot opportunities, particularly for new markets. And thanks to all this data, we enable brands and agencies to forecast their ROI, fuel strategy across their entire corporation. Sorry, that was quite a lengthy intro, wasn't it? But
no,
yeah, it's exciting data.
That sounds great, John. I'm Alina Ghost, I'm SEO manager at Amara, and basically I use Datametrics in my day-to-day work for both rankings, reporting, and things like that. So essentially my background, so I've worked for larger retailers like Tesco, Debenhams and Carpetright. So I'm pretty sure I know what Black Friday is like for like the bigger retailer as well. So I'm really looking forward to just giving some stats with John here. So thank you for joining us.
Cool, okay. Right, which slide are we on? Okay, so essentially, as Alina said, in this webinar, we're going to be reviewing performance from recent Black Friday and assessing the biggest considerations for creating your Black Friday strategy for 2019. And not necessarily Black Friday, but it's for any seasonal strategy. So we could be talking about Singles Days, we could be talking about Christmas, or any of those periods that kind of require intense engagement. And as part of today, we're going to look at who dominated Black Friday. Was it retailers? Was it publishers? Was it affiliates? And at different times, the search results are dominated by different groups. So we're going to look at those. And also, we're going to look at the split of US and UK and how the UK search results are sometimes infiltrated by US players.
Brilliant, I totally agree. So just to add to that, like it's not just about Black Friday. I think when we're talking about the whole steps, like the 6 steps, it's around things for Easter, it's for Valentine's Day, and it's things that come around year after year, and we know that we need to strategize for. So hopefully these tips will really be useful.
And Alina, so when you actually come up against something like this, whether it's Mother's Day or Father's Day or Christmas, do you start your research based on looking at last year?
Yeah, I think it's a real mix. So obviously last year we need to know the baseline in order to actually know where we want to get to this year or the next year, for example. In terms of having that baseline, we know also what we need to improve, what kind of things people are doing better than us, so in terms of competitors. And I guess it's about not only improving like the site, but also the proposition of the company itself.
Yeah, and I agree with what you say about competitors. It's absolutely vital to break out of the isolated approach of saying, how are we performing or how did we perform? Because we can learn so much from the competition.
Definitely, and I think we'll see a little bit of that later on in terms of actually seeing that is so important now. Not only is it day by day, but also a couple of hours, how much of a difference that could make. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, fantastic. And when you mentioned a couple of hours, I'm going to show you some really great data on actually tracking on that granular basis, and it's incredible how dynamic the SERPs is these days, much more than they used to be. So let's take a look at some of these intro stats. I believe you came up with these, Alina.
Yeah, I guess there's a real mix. So I think like there's quite a few stats that are jumping around these days, and what's good to understand is that make sure to grab something that's actually useful for you and your company. So for example, something that's come out of a conference actually this morning is that 80% of people actually don't mind that the delivery dates is extended a little bit further than what it used to be, and people don't mind it actually being extended if they know that they have that discount, the Black Friday discount. So I think that's quite interesting. Firstly, that there's actually 20 people who still are demanding.
That's me, 100%. I want it today.
And also the fact that maybe it is something, if you as a company don't want to give a discount because you think the delivery might be difficult for you to actually fulfill, maybe that's something that you should be thinking about, that actually 80% of people don't mind you extending that a bit further on. There's also some other stats, so the fact that there's like people using, or rather spending £220 when they used to actually spend over 300 last year. So
individually they're spending less.
Yes.
But I still think that 220 is a huge amount. It's a huge amount of money. Do you think that people are saving up throughout the year to actually spend on this day?
Well, I'm wondering whether that stat is particularly important for Friday. So is it the fact that more companies and more people are actually offering a discount throughout the whole week and the whole weekend as well? So that is bringing the price down? Or are we being a bit more savvy and actually bringing our money back and not spending as much?
Yeah, that's super interesting, because it looks like Black Friday used to be about a Friday, but now it's kind of smeared. It's smeared across an entire week. And even today, if you actually search and look around, you can still find those tail end Black Friday deals. So you're right, it's no longer about the day itself, which is kind of good for me, because if you're busy on that day and you actually have to work, then thank goodness for Saturday. It was a great Saturday.
And from a company's point of view, I know that we are always cautious about our warehouse, making sure that we can actually fulfill that proposition. So going back to the fact that if a lot of people are buying that particular product, then making sure that we can fulfill that order when they expect to have it. But the other thing that I thought was quite interesting is that actually there's been an increase in the amount of adults participating in Black Friday, specifically year on year. So it's quite interesting. There's like 62% compared to, I think it was 63 last year.
Well, 36 last year, which is phenomenal, isn't it? Which is a phenomenal jump. I mean, did you buy anything on Black Friday?
Well, I wanted to actually buy a laptop, and I thought it was quite interesting or infuriating that Currys put up their prices by £100 for that particular laptop compared to the previous day, which was £499. So the fact that it's such a big jump, that swayed me from actually not buying that product, unfortunately. How about you, John?
I bought nothing for the first time because you know what? Year after year, I have spent money on things I shouldn't have bought, probably following a couple of glasses of wine. And I think this is Black Friday. I've got to get a deal. And I've bought the most ridiculous things. I mean, this year I was looking at, there were all sorts of odd things on Amazon. You can actually search for strangest Black Friday gifts. And there were some strange things, but thankfully I resisted. First time ever, I saved myself some money. Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, but it's still clear that people are still finding the proposition really interesting, the fact that they still want to buy discounted products and that it's not going anywhere. The fact is it's actually growing and the peak is actually changing. So potentially the peak is no longer what it used to be, which is quite interesting because of that spread and not just being the one day anymore.
So you mean the peak as in no longer just Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. And that last stat you've got there, 6% overall footfall fell by 6% in shopping centres and town centres.
I think that's something that we're seeing quite in general anyway, though, because there's so many brick and mortars actually finding it quite difficult in this day and age to actually get the footfall that they're looking for. So digital is definitely the way to invest forward, and we're seeing that that a lot of people are buying online just because it's just so much easier.
And you know what? I think there is an increasing perception that you're much more likely to get a bargain when you purchase online. And certainly when you look at the news and you see people getting crushed in raids on stores just to get hold of one of 6 plasma screens, I think I'd rather stay at home in my lounge with a glass of Chardonnay and click away.
I completely agree. And the other thing is that you can actually do the comparison between the price points of that product. So much easier. You just have a lot of tabs open. So that's something that you should be aware of as a company too, that you should be price matching your competitors, if not even doing better.
Yeah, back to that competitor intelligence is so crucial, and I think that kind of takes us into the next slide. And in this section, we're going to look at a search landscape across those really valuable general Black Friday terms. And we actually looked at Black Friday brand searches, for example, Curry's laptop, as well as Black Friday electrical product search terms like best Black Friday laptop deals, best Black Friday 60-inch screen deals. But still, it was the Black Friday general group of terms that actually carried the most value. So what we're looking at here is a market intelligence chart. And this is actually a snapshot across 1,516 search terms from that Black Friday general group. And in this sector, we're actually analyzing 3,415 websites, really to see where the organic value lies, who's got the greatest share of voice, and who's likely to be generating the most revenue. So this is not just about search volume, it's not just about cost per click either. So if we look at that chart there, we can see that the top 4 players on Black Friday were TechRadar, The Telegraph, Amazon, and Money Savings Expert.
And I think that's quite interesting that TechRadar would be there at the top when technically they're more an affiliate than selling a product.
Now, that's interesting. And I know the guys at TechRadar, I can tell you, they spend an enormous amount of time building up this content throughout the year just so they can peak exactly at the right time. And it's something that they're extremely proud of. And they do work. Yeah, they don't leave it to the last minute, but instead they carry on from the success of last year. They maintain that visibility and they really push hard. But also, this is about intent as well. So Google's actually trying to constantly get inside the mind of the searcher, in this case, the Black Friday searcher, and return content that matches their intent. Do you think it's doing that? Do you want to read TechRadar when you're searching for best Black Friday deals?
Oh, hell yeah, because it's more about the reviews than it is about the product. That's why Amazon does quite well in general with their other products. But I can see why TechRadar can be really important for Black Friday specifically.
Yeah, and I think it's something I would want to read, because that's like a jumping point for then going off and finding those great deals. Because those guys with the the really great intelligence on the tech sector, they have the answers. That's their livelihood. They spend all day unboxing and looking at new products and rating and reviewing them. But the one thing I was so pleased to see there, down in position 19, who's that?
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia, exactly. And I guarantee if you looked at this sort of data 3 or 4 years ago, Wikipedia would have been in the top 3. Mm-hmm. It's always there. How many times are you searching for something and you see Wikipedia and you go, what are they doing? I don't want to read about it. I don't want to read what other people have said about this, the history of Black Friday. Okay, again, that's real proof that Google is actually better meeting the intent of the searcher. Would you say?
Yes, I totally agree. I think it's about time that Google does show us what we want, and I guess that could be reviews, it could be the product that we're actually buying. Even though it's discounted, people are still being really clever and want to know about the product before they buy it. So I totally agree.
Yeah, so you're happy with that lie of the land, are you?
Yeah, it makes sense.
I am. Yeah, let's get Wikipedia further out, and then obviously we've got Debenhams. Debenhams proudly in position 12, and that's kind of a real reflection of what they've been doing online recently, and how they have over the past few months massively increased their share of voice online, and that was down to sheer hard work. So good to
Sounds
see.
good. Yeah, I think they made a lot of progress after House of Fraser had a bit of a dip as well, I believe. But
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely know the team there who work really hard to actually get there. So sounds good.
Indeed. Good on them. Good on them. Okay, so let's move on and look at the dominance of publishers. Okay, so we're looking at that Black Friday period. 11 out of those top 20 results are actually publishers. So we've got Tech Radar, The Telegraph, Money Saving Expert, The Guardian, T3 and Y. T3, they should be there. Should they be higher? Yes, they probably should. Do they deserve to be higher? Probably not when you look at the way the website is structured. Then we got the Radio Times increasingly popping up in fields like this. So they actually do really well for a wide range of stuff.
So I think it's quite interesting for publishers specifically because the results pages on Google look quite different to, let's say, a product specific based information, news, carousels. So would you say it's a completely different beast to the products that they're showing up for?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're talking about general Black Friday searches. So we're not looking for electrical products. We're not looking for brands. We're looking for general. So I think that is a really good reflection from a share of value perspective. And it's interesting that in the build up to Black Friday, the SERPs and indeed value wasn't dominated by the publishers. It was actually the affiliates. And then as we move into Black Friday itself, the affiliates vanish. And there's some important learnings in that we'll come on to later. But certainly Black Friday itself, it's all about the publishers. And as we'll see towards the end, this is where we need to start building our relationships with these amazing publishers who have such an incredible share of
Mm.
voice. Okay. Going on, what are we looking at here? I think we're looking at affiliates. And again, this is different. It's a different landscape to the 2 months or even a month before Black Friday, where we only have 2 out of 20 affiliates here. And we've actually got, who is that? Can you read that, Alina? That's blackfriday.com and
I think what's important here is that people are still looking for vouchers. People are looking for vouchers. People are looking for an offer even before the Black Friday even comes along.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting that you say that they actually drop out on the Friday, because surely it means that they've already got their vouchers and the information that they want in terms of like what sales are happening, and then going directly to the retailer potentially. You're
so well planned. Honestly, that's the mind of somebody who's so organised. I just go and look for the best deals.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even think of looking for vouchers. But and again, this search term group we probably aren't even looking at the vouchers. We're probably looking at all those big, and I think it's made of 115, 116 general Black Friday terms. So if we were looking at vouchers, then yeah, this landscape would be different.
Okay, that makes more sense, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. I think I need to get more organised. So again, no huge surprises there, are there? If we look at those, Argos sitting there in number 6. You know what? I don't know what I should say, but Argos could do so much better.
Is it a legacy thing though?
Yeah. It's legacy, it's structure. They have issues with. It's no great surprise. I know the guys there. Issues with internal conflict. If those were resolved, they could actually do so much better in 2019.
And I think what's quite interesting as well is that in this conference earlier, they said that actually niche players, which works for Amara, being a luxury interiors brand, actually doing better than the bigger brands. So although we're seeing like the big picture here, and that's fantastic that we can see who is winning currently, it's not to say that the niche players don't have the opportunity to do still well out of Black Friday, which I think we shouldn't be forgetting. Yeah, I think from our point of view, from Amara's point of view, we were quite happy to see that companies like Selfridges and Harrods actually scaled down their discounts for designer brands specifically compared to what we did, and potentially that's why we got customers coming to buy that designer product specifically.
Yeah, I think you're right. And again, if this landscape was looking at more unique products and more upmarket products like Amara sells, you would see very different players within there. Now, do you think your ability to perform well is down to the fact that you are potentially more agile?
Yes.
And certainly when you mention people like Selfridges, the ability, they will have a lockdown period in the lead up to Black Friday. There's probably a code freeze, there'll be content freezes, so no changes can be made. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think going back to that Argos example, I don't see them being as agile as what we currently are in terms of actually changing. So I work directly with our web developers, and week on week we actually change the code. And as you say, there were embargoes when I was at Debenhams, so I definitely do see like that whole legacy site being a little bit more difficult to push through when you're asking for those developments for Black Friday. But it doesn't necessarily need to be just the technical side of things. It could be the proposition. So it's a matter of everything actually working together. And once again, when you're in a bigger company, it's a little bit more difficult as departments seem to work more in silos.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those much more agile luxury or niche players, they need to leverage the fact that their bigger competitors are always going to be locked down and frozen in the lead up to an event like this. And by looking at data, analyzing daily data, you've got a huge opportunity to leverage advantage there.
I totally agree.
Cool. So on the next, we've highlighted the brands on this slide, and we got 4 out of 20. Now, again, remember this is based on general searches, so we're not looking for brands. So any brands that do appear within this landscape are performing phenomenally well because we're not actually searching for them. So we've got Amazon, Argos, Debenhams again, and TK Maxx. You don't often see very often in a landscape like this. So any surprises there?
I think, as you say, TK Maxx is an interesting one.
Yeah.
That's really good for them, actually. Really good.
Yeah, maybe this is, and I haven't actually looked at their web assets recently. Maybe they're doing something. Maybe they're making some changes. Maybe they were simply more prepared for this Black Friday.
The other one will be the blackfriday.com. So a lot of people think that actually having a direct naming domain would help them rank better. And in this case, I guess it does help. And
they're American. Oh. What are they doing? Infiltrating the UK SERPs. Sorry, Americans out there. But how relevant?
But it makes sense. It is their promotion at the end of the day.
It is, yeah, it is their promotion. But it's not going to help me. It's not going to help me. And on that note of Americans, on this slide, we've actually highlighted those US domains that are appearing in the UK SERPs. And we've got 4 of them. So we got blackfriday.com, Best Black Friday. Look at these. That's really utilizing exact match domains. And then the CNET, who's been around since I was wearing shorts and playing Conkers. They've been around forever, but they're still performing incredibly well.
They must be moving on with the times, making sure to keep an eye out on what's actually trending, what promotions people still want.
Yeah, but and you know what this suggests to me? There are 4 slots there within that landscape that could be utilized by UK players if only they got their act together. And the fact that Google is bringing in these US domains, it says to me, there aren't enough UK sites out there that are matching the intent of the searcher, and that's why they're bringing the US in. So I would say, if you're not in this list, then for 2019, you've still got a great opportunity.
Totally agree.
Okay, so next we're looking at the mobile SERPs, and there's a really great tweet from Sam Robson. I know Sam, and Tech Radar. The most stressful few hours of my year coming to an end. Once again, we had #1 spot in Google UK for Black Friday from 6 a.m. through to 9 p.m. Amazing work. Yeah, and that is amazing work. And they've worked super hard to get that.
And they've got that top spot for quite a few things as well, not only mobile, but as we've seen in the other slides as well. So they've clearly worked hard, as you say, and have, would you say, spent a lot of this year actually planning for Black Friday?
Yeah, they spent a lot of time planning for everything. So there will have been a lot of work gone into this. But you know what? They leverage year on year from last year's activity.
Yeah.
You know, their asset remains visible, certainly visible to the search engines. So it's continually acquiring authority as the domain acquires authority, and they know how to leverage this to their best advantage. And we're going to go through some of those techniques towards the end.
Mm.
And I think the only new one in there is the BBC. So that's the only one that didn't appear in desktop. Interesting to see Twitter in at #3. Which it didn't appear in some of those others, or it's actually stepped up in mobile, which I guess makes sense to an extent.
Yeah, I guess that's quite interesting. So if there's a new deal that's come out and somebody's tweeted it out, there's a potential for it to actually come at the top, or if there's an article saying the best deals in the last hour.
Yeah.
Twitter's very good for like that.
And I think that's great to see, because you know, you get different people who want different things out of the search engine results. You know, some people are driven by images, some are driven by video. And as we see towards the end, it's an incredible opportunity to leverage the video carousel that people are simply missing out on. And some people are you know, triggered by social. So it's great to see social in there. And increasingly, I think Google has started to understand this, and the SERPs are becoming increasingly dynamic with much more opportunity to actually dominate or own more real estate in the search results.
Definitely, and this year, obviously, social media has become more of a prominent factor in actual Google ranking. So I think that makes absolute sense.
Oh, you're right. Despite Google denying that, but I've seen.
No, I think that it's official now.
Yeah, oh, is it? They've denied it for years, but I always knew. I always knew it was a contributing factor. And yeah, this wonderful slide of considerations for Black Friday, and I think this is based on some thoughts that you had, Alina, initially. So maybe we just touch on these.
Definitely. So I think starting off with returns, I think that's quite an interesting one, because there has been a suggestion that actually Black Friday increases returns afterwards, but Amara didn't see that.
Is that because your products are just so good?
I like to think so. I'm hoping the quality is just damn right.
I'm sure it is.
I guess the idea is that although there's an increase in returns, that is still balanced, because there's just an increase in people buying that product. So it's an interesting one, and if it is an issue for your company, I just recommend keeping an eye out for the returns factor, but then at the same time thinking that Black Friday isn't just about product selling, but about brand awareness as well. So it's a matter of getting your brand out there, getting that brand awareness for your product and your name, and then potentially not being worried about the returns that come afterwards.
So it sounds like returns are less of a problem for products that Amara sells, you know, higher end, more luxury, more niche. You know, I'm not going to rush out and spend, I don't know how much is a sofa. Don't tell me. I'm sure it's a lot of money. You know, I'm not going to do that hastily. But yet I am going to buy some stuff for 40 or 50 or 60 quid and probably regret it painfully on the Saturday morning. So do you think that high margin products, let's talk about electricals, those huge 4K plasma TVs and stuff, that are perfect for gifting? Yeah.
Don't know what kind of gifts you buy.
To myself.
Oh, yourself.
To myself. Yeah. But do you think they perform better, things like that? Are they less likely to be returned?
I think high margin is quite an interesting one. I think when adding this symbol specifically, it was more around actually trying to play around with that for promotional promotion specifically. So obviously, if you know you've got a high margin on a particular product, why not put it down a bit more and actually be more competitive in your niche and in your area? But I think you're totally right when it comes to like big products. I think you need to be quite careful, and yeah, Black Friday is definitely perfect for that. Like promotional stuff.
Okay. And so, and then, as we said before, we know average spend was down, but yet more people were participating, so the overall spend was up. I don't know what the reasons are for that, but
so I'm wondering whether it's us going back to that fact that a lot of more companies are just making it into like a whole week. Plus the Cyber Monday, rather than it just being the day or two, or like just that weekend. It's more spread out now. As I've mentioned before, is just making sure that that proposition is manageable, not only from a warehouse perspective, but also when people come onto your website. Like the first time a few years ago that Black Friday actually became a thing in the UK, I'd say, a lot of sites just crashed.
Yeah.
And I think that's important that we are getting more prepared for it now. We know that it's coming. More companies are prepared for this capacity, and therefore we're also making sure that obviously that it's throughout the week to help people buy along the way.
Absolutely. Sorry.
But yeah, in terms of like average spend, it is interesting that like we go back to what we mentioned before. It did go down.
Yeah.
But there's a question around: is it just Friday?
Yeah. Smeared like a fuzzy electron, if I can use that analogy, which kind of doesn't exist in one place, but it's smeared across several days. So how does Black Friday really play out for luxury and niche retailers like Amara? I mean, how does it work for you guys?
As I briefly mentioned, I think it's quite interesting that a lot of companies, actually bigger companies, started to scale back on a few promotions. So we've actually seen quite a good uplift from that sense. As a niche brand, obviously, we do find it imperative that we are still a part of Black Friday because of that brand awareness piece, as well as offering our customers what they want. So for example, we sent out an emailer asking we asked people to sign up to our email in order to get Black Friday deals, and we got so many more subscribers over the average amount, like a lot more than usual, in order to actually gain people who are interested in those discounts. So I think it's an opportunity also, after everything that's happened with email this year, to actually grow that email database once again using seasonal discounting such as Black Friday.
And that kind of ties into the whole brand loyalty part that we were going to discuss. I think having covered that, one thing that kind of gets me excited is that idea that Black Friday next year is going to be on payday. So are we all going to go berserk?
So that's quite an interesting one, because like Amara, we have such an affluent customer that we don't actually know whether that's going to impact us. So that'll be a really interesting one. Maybe we can come back next year and tell you guys.
Yeah.
But I think it will make an impact, especially for companies who are maybe with a lower price point, potentially for even just electronics. Maybe more people are more likely to buy because they know they've got the money right there.
I think you're absolutely right. So, you know, if I'm looking to buy a brand new TV, I don't even watch TV, but if I was going to, or a new laptop, Apple, or something, you know, and I've got money in the bank, I'm much more likely, and a glass of wine in my hand, I'm much more likely to actually go ahead and purchase that. Maybe that's because I am more impulsive. I think you're better planned, more organised.
I think majority of adults are impulsive, so I think that makes absolute sense that people do just buy things if they see a good deal. And I think
it's going to be super interesting, and I think next year we're going to be monitoring the search landscape on that day in great detail. I think the actual landscape is going to look different than it does today. It looks different year on year and week on week anyway. High cost per click. How can you build a cost efficient PPC strategy on Black Friday? I know you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, just briefly, the fact that PPC is getting more competitive, I think it's about being more clever in regards to what you're actually bidding on. We actually saw an increase in our, I want to say AOV potentially. So it could be just around making sure that you know what you're bidding on and trying to push that CPC. To ensure that you're getting the most out of it, because it is a competitive landscape.
Yeah.
More companies are putting money towards PPC, so it's about being more clever and not just about going about the big generic keywords.
Cool. And
would you say that it's also about being quite reactive for those campaigns as well at the time?
I totally agree. I think it's about monitoring as well. So yeah, that's a very good point, and something that we'll see in the later slides as well when John goes through like the couple hours landscape. You'll see how quickly things can change in the search results, and that you should definitely be making the most out of it.
Yeah, and that part we're actually going to look at people's spend on ads as well, and it's really surprising. It's not what we expected. It's not what anybody expected. So that'll be super interesting. And the last thing last couple on this slide, when I came to Roll Street roundabout, the tube today, I came across this sustainable shop that I'd never seen before, and I was very tempted to go in there and spend the money I didn't spend on Black Friday. Now, as a reaction to Black Friday, there's a lot of people actually creating and launching initiatives like Tom Cridland and Greenpeace, initiatives like Make Something Week. Do you think this is going to increase? Do you think there's going to be more of a backlash against this rampant commercialism that we see on Black Friday?
Oh, I think that's an interesting one. There always seems to be a backlash to something these days.
Yeah.
So it will be a prediction to say, yes, Greenpeace potentially will have an effect.
Yeah, so I guarantee if you've gone out and spent 200 or 300 quid on something electronic that you know is going to go in the bin in 18 months, if not 12 months, how much better will you feel? How less will your post-purchase anxiety be if you've actually bought something that is sustainable? I think
it's going back to like that whole awareness piece that people are making sure that they're using reusable things, that they're recycling. There's this whole David Attenborough thing that's come out as well. So we're definitely being more mindful of that stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot more people are looking for more recycling things. Actually, one of the other things that's come out of the research from Black Friday is that potentially we might be moving away from material goods bit by bit anyway, that more people are looking for like gift experiences, like experience days and actually spa days and doing something rather than just that buying a product. So yeah, I totally agree with you, John.
Yeah, cool. And
I'll back you up.
Thank you. Let's go and have a look in that store afterwards. So, and you mentioned experiences, and experiences are really increasing as people are struggling to maintain that competitive advantage. And I think that kind of leads us on into the next slide, which is beyond retail. Who took part, and there's some examples there. So we got Groupon experiences, Ryanair. And did you know that on Black Friday you could actually purchase a return ticket to LA for 175 quid through Air New Zealand?
Why didn't you tell me?
I don't know. I didn't know. But you know what? Next year I'm going to be looking out for that. That's my holiday sorted.
There you go. Trip together.
Let's do it. Let's go and give a talk somewhere. And then I noticed, there were other airlines doing that, but also there were a lot of restaurants, and certainly in London, you could go to Darbar, which is a great Indian restaurant. You got 50% off the menu on Black Friday. Why go anywhere else? Why was anybody anywhere else? Even Gordon Ramsay, that tightwad, was offering 25% off vouchers, that last up till February. Isn't that incredible?
And I think it goes back to the fact that people will be able to find actually like your brand on these sites, which is like that whole brand awareness piece, and not only actually coming to buy your product, but it's the fact that they buy, like that you're finding your customers through other means.
Exactly. And in my research for mince pies, which is one of my favorite things, I discovered that Conditor and Cook, which is just down Gray's Inn Road, around the corner from our office, they had a 20% off deal, and all you had to do was use the phrase "I love cake."
Nice.
Who doesn't love cake?
Yeah.
Yeah. So customer for life now.
Definitely. I'd say I would eat cake for breakfast, but hey ho, just me.
I'm gonna get you some of those mince pies. Apparently they are the best in the country.
Sounds good.
So looking at this next chart. So remember we looked at that share of voice bar chart earlier. This one we're actually analysing share of voice over time. So on the y-axis we've got the percentage share of voice. On the x-axis across the bottom we've got the weeks of the year starting from 1st of June up till last week. And each line there represents the performance of a brand. And this is super interesting. This is desktop. So there we have clearly out front performing best is Amazon. And yet in purple or mauve or lilac or whatever color that is, you know colors, you work in fashion, sort of greeny, turquoisey. That's TechRadar, who are really trying hard to actually outperform them. And what you see near the end there is something that's highlighted on the next slide. It is an algorithmic battle taking place between these two giants, and on the day, TechRadar wins. So that's phenomenal. They actually jump up above Amazon's 20% and achieve 36% share of voice. So they timed it perfectly. And that wasn't just luck, that was planning, that was leveraging the authority of this site. And again, this was for those terms that we were looking at earlier. And you can see the other players in there. In green, that's Argos. Argos were doing pretty well up to 21st of September, and then their performance declined as well.
So it's interesting, like even if you are performing well up to even a week before, even the day before, you can't get comfortable. You have to make sure that actually you are always checking, making sure that you are being reactive.
Absolutely, and you need to use data to do that. You cannot rely on previous good performance, as you say, even 2 or 3 days before. And around an event like this, like Black Friday or Christmas or anything, you know, a week is a long time in search. You need to be analysing your performance and the performance of your competitors on a daily basis. So that, if we move on to the next slide, that's mobile. So again, it's the same data, and here that algorithmic battle, tug of war, wrestling match between TechRadar and Amazon. It's clear to see at the end where literally it's almost like Google is A/B testing to see which one of these better matches the intent of the searcher. And again, it's TechRadar that wins out.
But then I think that goes back to actually making sure that what you are producing, the content that you're creating, is always offering the answer to the intent of the customer.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And you know, any campaign, whatever that campaign is, whether it's evergreen or whether it's Christmas or Black Friday, it begins inside the mind of your customer. And if it doesn't begin there, then you're never going to match that intent. So on the next screen, we get a little more granular. And what we're looking at there is a snapshot of rapid tracking. And this is a 24-hour period where we're actually analyzing the top 20 search results, including all features, every 2 hours, which actually creates 480 potential Black Friday touch points. Okay, and this is based on the search term Black Friday deals, which is the biggest one. And what you can see there, you can see a lot of gray circles. Those are classic links, blue links, old school links. You got top stories in green, you got text ads, you got product listed ads, and you got video carousel in pink. And you know, actually video carousel, as we'll soon see, is where the opportunity lies that people just haven't leveraged. But as you can see there, on a 2-hourly basis, the landscape changes quite significantly. And this is why you need to start thinking about an ecosystem approach. I mean, do you guys concern yourselves much with the actual individual features within Google's ecosystem?
So let me start by saying I absolutely bloody love this because I think this is a new feature that you guys came out with.
Yeah.
So I think this is really helpful in the sense that for example, I know obviously focusing on organic specifically, we did a test of 20 pages where we actually changed the metadata, so the titles, meta descriptions, so that the snippets on the Google search result would specifically include Black Friday deals, dependent on like what category it was and what designer and brand it is. So although I can see some information, like I can tell that we actually saw an increase in click-through rates in Search Console. And in Google Analytics, I can say that we have actually had more sessions to those pages. But what I think this tool would be more useful for is the fact that I can actually say that because we moved up this hour, I can say that, for example, we have had an extra amount of traffic because we moved in positions and not just because, for example, everybody is shopping in Black Friday, that there's more traffic in general. So I think that's a really good one. In terms of going back to like the types of search results, I think that's really important. Like I know that featured snippets will be increasing in the sense that this is for voice search, and if you're future-proofing your brand, that's something that you should be doing. But I know that for images, videos, like you mentioned earlier, there are things that are also a way to get people to see your brand as like an awareness piece and just a way to show your promotions. So I think this is a really powerful tool.
And that's a great example, and that's exactly why we created this, because we realized that during these periods of intense engagement, like Black Friday or Christmas or other events or new product launches, you need to utilize data and you need to understand the opportunity. And that opportunity is changing faster than it ever has done. So on the next slide, we can actually see who won, and this is no surprise, who owned above the fold on the day, and that's TechRadar. TechRadar position 1, TechRadar position 2. Okay, in the old days you call this clustering, and we've been talking about clustering ever since long before Matt Cutts departed Google. So, but it still happens nowadays. As long as your presence takes the form of different features, you can cluster as much as you want. And within that lies great opportunity. And there's Amazon in position 3. So moving on to the ads. Okay, and we got this email from Louise Merry at the Telegraph, who we know, and let me just read that out. Ads did not dominate where we thought they might. They popped up at lunchtime, late at night, and not during commuter times, which was interesting. It seems like people are much more likely to convert in their lunch hours and late at night, last chance perhaps, but more likely to browse during the day. We expected a lot more interaction with the ads, especially on tech products. And you know what? We expected that as well. But when you look at the data, when you look at the search landscape, you can see the ads appearing at 4 a.m., midday, 2 p.m., and 10 at night. Not what we thought, dominated by 3 groups. We had general retail, we had fashion, and then we had telco. What's BT doing in there? That was certainly a surprise for me.
So I think it's quite obvious that the game is changing quite a bit. I think it's really interesting to see that you can't just be relying on the one thing, that you should actually be doing a mix of things.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, Finally, before we move on to the what do you need to do about this, how do you get it right? I know, conscious we're short on time. Here we can see the ecosystem. This was the opportunity I mentioned earlier. You have to understand the nature of the ecosystem, which elements, which features are present at what time, and what do we need to know. So if the video carousel appears at a certain time, you now need to know what time to push your video out, so that's the most recent or the most current content. So perhaps we can talk more about ecosystem at another time. But finally, this radar, this is about opportunity, and this was for TechRadar. Really, this was the only publisher to actually get in the answer card. But what does this show? This shows video carousel. They didn't own any of that space. If I was them next year, I think really hard about actually getting video content, whether it's interviews pre-Black Friday, who's going to do what, even unboxings from the previous year or something, because they have a lot of that. Yeah, they have a lot of that content. So for them, I would say utilize that opportunity. So I think we've got a couple of slides left, three slides left. This one, this is our and this is all about building that successful strategy that doesn't just apply to Black Friday. And this is our PIPR, if you like, PIPR. This is about planning. This is about influencing at the right time. It's about peaking at the right time. And for me, all of this, all that hard work, as you saw from Tech Radar, comes into planning. This is the period of low interest. This is about doing keyword research, getting inside the mind of your customer, creating incredible content, theming your content, and critically, making the right connections between your different online assets. Because you know what, and I've said this before, said it a million times, the better we get at making those connections, the better Google will understand the relationship, and we're much likely to appear in those different features.
So I guess it's about going back and not just thinking about the one thing, but actually thinking about the many things that you can be doing and making sure that all those things work well for you. So it's thinking about the multiple channels and how to get that customer at the right place at the right time.
Exactly, right place, right time, base it on data and base it on insight. And we've got two more slides, and this one really, it just builds a little bit on the previous. I mentioned the planning stage that's critical. Influencing, and again, so remember, in the influence period, this was before Black Friday, we were talking about affiliates, okay? And affiliates are critical in that influencer phase, making relationships with them. And don't forget that PPC, media, affiliate rates, they're all much cheaper at this time, so it makes more sense to leverage those. And then, when we peak, in this case of Black Friday, let's think about a relationship with those publishers who we know are dominating them, okay? The right kind of relationships will drive enormous authority to our content. And that's, we're not going to get into the landscape without it. And then finally, we repeat, which takes us neatly on to the final slide, which actually lists out the 6 steps. So we identified the highest value category. And we've done that with those general Black Friday deals rather than brands, rather than electrical products, for example. So that was identify the keywords, advertise with the right affiliates at the right time, not too early, certainly not too late because they vanish from the landscape, partner with publishers, and of course start early. And so this actually sounds to me like Amara's Black Friday strategy, Alina. How closely aligned would it be?
No, I totally agree. Like starting early, like starting now for next year, and I'm not just being silly. It's a matter of actually thinking about what you are going to be doing as a company for next year in order to be successful. Because this isn't just about your website, but it's also about your proposition. Your buyers need to know what they're buying, and then your warehouse needs to know how much capacity they will need. So I think in terms of identifying the opportunities, I think it's important if you're a niche brand that you can actually focus on those niche products specifically. And if you are big and going for those generics, why don't you use the publishers that John is showing you that already are at the top to help you get that brand awareness. So yeah, I think it's definitely important to start now. And something that I wanted to mention as well is actually to ensure that your pages are always live throughout the year. So when I say that, for example, your Black Friday page is always live, but potentially change the content that's actually on that page.
Yeah.
So for example, we usually change our seasonal stuff to a sign-up page so that if a person wants to know about that promotion, they can just pop their email in and get those offers when the time is right. But when actually that season does come on, then they can actually see all the offers and the content is updated as relevant.
Oh, that's such a good point about keeping it live. Keep it live, keep it in the XML sitemap, okay? Make sure it can be crawled and make sure, for goodness sake, it's not date stamped in the URL. Because so many people do that, you end up having to 301 it to a new page, and you'll always lose some authority on that. that.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on, guys. Thanks very much for that. It was really amazing. So we've got a couple of questions that we can squeeze in quickly. So I'm going to go straight in, and we've just talked a bit about the future as well and some advice for the future. But I just wanted to understand, how do you think data can work alongside technology for the future to create a better experience for people on Black Friday?
Yeah, I'll take this one first. In terms of data, it depends which ones you're looking at. Firstly, it's always about testing. So once you have tested something and it has worked for you, do more of that. If not, do the opposite, obviously. But in terms of data, actually seeing the things and your competitors, for example, then you can go onto those websites and see what they're doing well, so that potentially you can copy and actually do better. So using data isn't just about looking at the information, it's actually what you do with that data that counts. So I think it's important to see if you are seeing a trend, then use that and don't just ignore it. It could be, this data could be anything. So it's a matter of looking at your Google Analytics and how much traffic you have got, to potential click-through rates, traffic from different affiliates. So I think that could be really important. PPC wise, it's about actually understanding what's your proposition there, from the average order value to click-through rates to cost per click that you're actually paying. Do you expect that to grow? If for the last few years it has been growing, then yeah, the answer is yes, it will grow. So you have to be spending more money. And that's how you can be clever with that data that you're getting.
Cool. I love that. And then just really quickly on three things. For me, data is all about, it's about understanding the market and your competitors. It's about really pinning down opportunity, from a revenue perspective. What are we sitting on top on that we're not actually realizing it? I did have a third point, but it's vanished from my mind. Sorry.
That's absolutely. Well, I'll crack on with the next question and final question of today before we finish up. So we've obviously talked a lot about digital and data, but there's a massive offline element to Black Friday and that whole week. So how necessary do you think it is to align the online and offline strategies for marketers on Black Friday, and obviously combine those two data sets as well in the most effective way? Or do you think that isn't necessary at all?
So I think that's going back to actually not putting all your eggs in one basket. It's about being aware of all your channels, and footfall and actually offline is one of those channels, because people physically still go and shop. It's not just an online world. Luckily, we are physical beings, so we will be shopping with our hands and eyes and being impulsive as well. So if you are brick and mortar, so for example, Amara actually all completely online, which I forgot to mention earlier. So it's a little bit different for us, but in terms of like a brick and mortar company, it is important that you're still making that offer, if not even better offline, because you know that it's potentially struggling or is decreasing. So if we are looking back at that data that I mentioned earlier, then we need to ensure that if we know that it's actually decreasing, then maybe do a bit less, but the same proposition, or scale it down in some sort of way.
Yeah, so even being a bit competitive with yourself then on and offline. Okay, brilliant.
And then just very quickly, I think there needs to be a good degree of alignment, because you have to remember that omni-channel shoppers are notoriously promiscuous. So they could be in your store, okay, 50% of them will be doing searches while they are shopping in your store. You need to ensure that you are virtually present as well as physically present, with the right offering, with the right message. And again, that comes back to getting inside their minds.
Great. Well, that was brilliant. Thanks both for your time today.
Thanks for
I think we've all learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone will commence planning immediately.
As they should.
So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to our partners, Datametrics, today, and we hope you tune in again soon. Our last webinar of the year is actually on the 11th of December. on brand safety. So make sure you sign up for that as well at www.thedrum.com/webinar. So thanks very much and hope to see you soon. Bye.
Yeah,
Brilliant, thank you.
Cheers.